Are we facing a time where everything feels, well, kind of chaotic? Like the whole idea of order is slipping away.
Hmm.
The material you sent over, it paints this picture, right? Our world is insistently, sometimes almost desperately, searching for a concept of world order.
Yeah, desperately feels right sometimes.
But it's happening alongside just incredible interdependence, but also, rising chaos. Think WMDs, states literally falling apart, climate threats.
Genocide, new tech that just amplifies conflict.
Exactly.
Uh,
It's a lot. Hard to get your head around, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And that tension you mentioned, this deep human need for order, bumping up against forces that seem to, well, defy it, that's exactly why digging into the history of world order is so important right now.
My thoughts, exactly. So welcome everyone to The Deep Dive. Our mission today to really unpack the insights from your sources on world order.
We're going to try and pull out the key nuggets, the most important takeaways for you.
Yeah, give you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed without drowning in all the noise.
We'll look at how different civilizations tackled this Europe's very unique path. The distinct approaches in Islam, America, Asia, China, how they all conceived of order.
And, crucially, we've got to talk about how technology today is just fundamentally reshaping things and what
Yeah.
that actually means for you. Okay, let's dive in.
Let's do it.
So let's start with Europe. It took quite a journey, didn't it, to find its own system?
Oh, absolutely. A dramatic one.
For centuries, you had this almost a spiritual quest for unity, the Holy Roman Empire, the Church.
Right. This ideal of universal order.
Figures like Charles V inheriting these vast territories,
Mm.
genuinely aiming for that universal thing. But it kept fracturing, didn't it? Religion, politics.
It did. Voltaire's famous line, that the Holy Roman Empire was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire.
Yeah.
It just perfectly captures that disillusionment. The medieval dream, this idea of a single authority, pope and emperor together. It just couldn't hold up against things like the Reformation, the Age of Discovery.
Right. Those shifts shattered the illusion of a unified Christendom, left the continent deeply divided.
Profoundly divided.
And it was out of that division, especially the sheer devastation of the 30 Years' War, that something totally new emerges in 1648, the Peace of Westphalia.
Yes.
Your sources call it a practical accommodation to reality. What was so, groundbreaking about that?
Well, it wasn't some big idealistic vision. That's the key thing.
Okay.
It was a really brutal, pragmatic response. The realization that these universal claims, religious, imperial, whatever, that just led to endless war.
So what did they do instead?
They set up a system, independent, sovereign states. They recognized each other's existence and, crucially, agreed not to interfere in each other's internal business.
The non-interference principle.
Exactly. So division, multiplicity, which had just kind of happened historically, now became the deliberate basis of this new order. It was a radical rethink. Pragmatism over forced unity.
Okay, so a big shift. From universal empire dreams to sovereign states reality. And a key figure in this strategic pivot was Cardinal Richelieu in France.
Yes, definitely.
He wasn't thinking divine right, was he? He saw the chaos in Central Europe as, well, an opportunity for France.
Absolutely. A strategic opportunity. He centralized power in France, made the state more efficient, and pursued what he called raison d'etat, the state's interest.
Which meant,
kind of counterintuitively back then, aligning Catholic France with Protestant states.
against the Catholic Habsburgs.
Precisely. It wasn't about faith for him. It was pure geopolitics. Keep Central Europe divided, stop any single power getting too dominant. That idea, state survival and power first, was fundamental to Westphalia.
So this Westphalian system, it really changed how things worked. The material mentions limited wars over calculable issues. Sounds less like total war and more like, high-stakes chess.
That's actually a pretty good analogy. It was a new kind of balance of power, a delicate equilibrium. States checking each other's ambitions. Think of Frederick the Great of Prussia. His land grabs were based on clear advantage, not some grand moral mission.
Right. Practical gains.
This system mostly stopped anyone getting too powerful, becoming a hegemon. It operated more like a theater, as the source puts it, where lives and values were put on display, but within rules that prevented, total annihilation.
Okay, so that's Europe's journey. But of course, that system wasn't static. Ideas evolved. What comes next?
You get the Enlightenment. Thinkers like Immanuel Kant.
Kant. Perpetual peace.
Right. He envisioned this permanent peaceful order, a voluntary federation of republics. Peace through reasoned design.
Sounds nice.
It does, but the issue, as your sources point out, is that it kind of ignored the underlying organic and cultural realities. It suggested order could just be invented by pure reason, overlooking all the deep history and culture-shaping things, maybe setting the stage for more upheaval unintentionally.
Okay, so against that backdrop, boom, the French Revolution. This sounds like where things get really shaken up again. How did it mess with Westphalia?
Oh, completely. It was a seismic shift. It just threw out that Westphalian separation between domestic and foreign policy.
Oh, so?
It launched what this source calls a secular crusade, mobilized the entire adult male population, total war for universal ideology.
Wow.
It put sovereignty in this abstract idea, the popular will, which meant leaders could interpret and enforce it without the old limits. It basically merged domestic and foreign policy, legitimacy, and power in a way that just shattered those Westphalian limits on war. Kind of a precursor to modern totalitarianism in a way.
And Napoleon really defined that, didn't he? Charisma, military wins.
Yeah.
He rationalized the French system, but ultimately wanted an empire over Europe.
Exactly. Push for that continental dominance. His defeat, though, by a united Europe, ironically sort of vindicated Westphalian principles. In the end, the system pushed back against hegemony.
But at a huge cost.
Oh, yeah. It ushered in the true age of total war, mobilizing entire nations, way beyond those limited 18th century conflicts.
So after Napoleon, devastation. Then the Congress of Vienna in 1815 tries to put things back together.
Right, rebuilding order.
Yeah.
They tried to create these great masses, like strengthening Prussia to block future French expansion. And they brought Russia into the European concert in a big way.
And diplomacy was incredibly slow then, wasn't it? Weeks for messages.
Yeah, hard to imagine now. But that Vienna settlement actually brought relative peace for about a century, a kind of Newtonian clockwork balance managed through diplomacy. Until things got rigid again, especially after Germany unified under Bismarck. That predictable system started to break down. It became more like a Darwinian world, survival of the fittest.
Not a stable balance anymore.
No, more cutthroat. States focused on dominance. Alliances became inflexible, locked in.
Leading straight to World War I.
Directly. A blow that, as the source says, obliterated a century of peace and order.
And then the aftermath, Versailles, didn't quite fix it.
No, Versailles had its own problems. It focused maybe too much on legitimacy, ignoring the power realities or leaving them unbalanced. Combine that with U.S. isolationism, this toxic mixture of wishful pacifism, geopolitical imbalance, allied disunity. It just paved the way for more conflict.
And eventually the Cold War, a totally different structure.
A bipolar world. The U.S. managing the West, balanced against the Soviet bloc, all underpinned by the nuclear deterrent. Mutual assured destruction amid. A terrifying kind of stability, but arguably it kept a fragile peace.
Okay, so that's Europe's complex, often violent path. But, as your sources really emphasize, this wasn't the only way. Other parts of the world had radically different ideas about order.
Absolutely. Let's shift focus. Take Islam, for instance. Historically, it had its own powerful universal concept of world order.
How did that work?
Well, expansion was often seen as a sacred duty, aiming to unite the realm of war under the harmony of Islam, a unitary system.
And the Ottoman Empire was the big example of that.
For centuries, yes. They were militarily stronger than European coalitions for a long time, and explicitly rejected the European idea of equal sovereign states.
There's that quote from Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror.
Right, telling the Italians, basically, you're divided, there should only be one empire, one faith, one sovereignty, a totally different worldview.
And you argue this history still resonates.
You can see echoes. Modern jihadist groups, Sunni and Shia, often reject state borders as illegitimate, an abomination, aiming to rebuild a single, divinely inspired system. It's a direct challenge to Westphalia.
Okay, now let's cross the Atlantic. America.
A very different starting point.
Very different. Rooted in those Puritan ideals, building a city upon a hill.
To inspire the world.
Exactly. Through the justness of its principles. The American idea was that peace would just happen, naturally, once other nations became democracies. Foreign policy wasn't about pursuing a narrow American interest in the European way, but cultivating shared principles.
You see that in things like the Monroe Doctrine, declaring the Western Hemisphere off limits. Yeah, long before they really had the power to back it up. And manifest destiny, seeing westward expansion not just as conquest, but as a kind of moral, almost natural process.
But then things get more complicated. Theodore Roosevelt comes along.
Right. TR was really the first U.S. president to systematically think about America's global role in geopolitical terms. He saw the U.S. needing to act as a global balancer, kind of like Britain had done in Europe.
Which is a big contrast to Woodrow Wilson later on.
Huge contrast. Wilson was all about idealism, self-determination, collective security through the League of Nations. He wanted a world of law, not a balance of power.
He thought transparency and public opinion would lead to peace.
Essentially, yes, that if people knew the facts, they'd choose peace. But it raises that fundamental question for U.S. policy that's still debated. Can you have a world of law without a balance of power underpinning it? Or does one need the other?
A massive question, still relevant today.
Okay,
Let's shift again to Asia. The sources say Asia itself is tricky, it's so diverse.
it really is. But generally, if we can generalize, the historical organizing principle wasn't sovereign equality like Westphalia. It was hierarchy.
Hierarchy, how did that work?
Power was shown through deference, tribute systems, not clearly drawn borders. Smaller places would align with bigger empires, send tribute, though sometimes quite creatively, like the Ryukyu kingdom paying tribute to both China and Japan to stay autonomous.
Clever. And Japan's story is fascinating here, forced open by Commodore Perry.
Right, 1853. But instead of just resisting, they made this incredible strategic choice.
To learn from the barbarians.
Yeah, exactly. Master Western concepts and tech to join the Westphalian system as an equal. The Meiji Emperor's charter oath knowledge shall be sought throughout the world. Sums it up. Amazing flexibility.
But then later their approach shifted again.
Yes. After World War I, Japan's own imperial expansion, the East Asian co-prosperity sphere that was definitely hierarchical, anti-Westphalian, shows how they could adapt and redefine their role based on the times.
Okay, what about India? There's this ancient text, the Arthashastra. Sounds pretty hardcore.
Oh, it is. Kautilya's work.
Yeah.
Millennia before Machiavelli, it lays out this incredibly pragmatic, almost ruthless view. A circle of states always in latent hostility. It advocated conquest over equilibrium.
So very different from trying to maintain a balance.
Totally. Equilibrium was seen as just a temporary side effect of everyone pursuing their own self-interest, not a goal in itself.
Yeah.
Constant potential conflict was the assumption.
But then post-independence, India, under Nehru, took a different path.
Yes, non-alignment during the Cold War. The Panchashila, those 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, much more idealistic.
Yet today.
Today, India is playing a much stronger regional power role, a bit like the U.S. with the Monroe Doctrine in its own sphere. So you see that blend of idealism and realpolitik playing out again.
And finally, China, the historical concept of all under heaven.
Tianxia. Yes, a universal hierarchy, China at the absolute center, everyone else basically tributaries.
Which clashed completely with Westphalia when it arrived.
Absolutely. They were forced into that system by colonial powers. Later, you get Mao Zedong, who even when China was weak, insisted on its central importance through ideology, saying things like, all under heaven is in chaos, the situation is excellent.
Excellent chaos.
Because it opened the way, in his view, for a new communist world order, led by Beijing. A unique kind of psychological assertion of centrality.
But then Deng Xiaoping changed course dramatically.
He did. Socialism with Chinese characteristics meant embracing international institutions, playing by the established rules, which obviously fueled China's economic rise.
Becoming the world's second largest economy.
Right. But there's still this underlying ambivalence, maybe. China wasn't there when the current rules were made. They adhere to them, generally, but they clearly expect a central role in shaping future rules, maybe revising some existing ones.
So acting within Westphalia, but also drawing on that ancient all-under-heaven legacy.
Exactly. It's a uniquely layered approach. Westphalian state and ancient civilizations simultaneously.
Okay, wow. We've covered a huge sweep of history, different models of order. Let's bring it right up to today, because those historical currents are crashing into some really big modern challenges. Nuclear proliferation, for starters.
Yeah, the sources use Iran's nuclear program as a key example here.
How does proliferation change the game from the Cold War?
It makes that old calculus of deterrence mad, much less reliable, more fragile.
Why?
Because it potentially gives a perverse advantage, as the source puts it, to states or maybe even non-state actors willing to make apocalyptic decisions. The stability of mutual deterrence becomes really shaky, and it raises that tough question. What do you do when negotiation itself is seen just as another form of conflict.
Yeah. Then there's the problem of states actually falling apart.
A really alarming trend. Look at the Middle East, Syria, Iraq, Libya.
Yeah.
States dissolving into fragments, sectarian or tribal units, or being taken over by non-state groups.
Creating ungoverned spaces.
Exactly. Zones of non-governance. They become breeding grounds for terrorism, weapons flow, proxy wars. Syria is just a tragic example of how quickly things unravel when the state collapses and the international community can't agree. The consequences ripple outwards, destabilizing whole regions. It threatens the whole state system.
And layered on top of all this, the digital age, a double-edged sword, right?
Absolutely. You've got billions of devices connected, the Internet of Things, ubiquitous computing. It challenges state authority in new ways.
Cyber attacks.
Easier to launch than defend against, often anonymous, crossing borders instantly.
Right.
Bypassing traditional defenses.
And just the sheer volume of information.
Right. The source talks about a surfeit of information that paradoxically inhibits the acquisition of knowledge and pushes wisdom even further away.
Too much noise.
Too much noise, maybe not enough signal. And social media.
Yeah.
It was hoped it would connect people, but it can also deepen divisions, amplify extremism. We saw that in Syria, too. It hardened positions rather than fostering dialogue.
So, is policymaking changing? Less reflection, more information manipulation.
That's the danger, isn't it? A shift from careful analysis to just managing perceptions, playing the information game for short-term advantage, a really profound challenge for governance.
Which brings us back, in a way, to America. Its role seems indispensable, according to the sources, but also consistently ambivalent.
Yes, that tension runs throughout. This constant debate within the U.S. core security interests versus the push to promote democracy and human rights.
We saw that acutely after interventions like Iraq and Afghanistan.
Definitely. And the source makes a stark point. If America cannot act in both modes, the realist balance of power mode and the idealist promoting values mode, it will not be able to fulfill either.
So it needs both.
That's the argument. This tension between values and geopolitics isn't something to be solved, maybe, but managed. It's central to how the U.S. engages with all these challenges we've been talking about.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Different historical paths to order, Westphalia's rise and evolution, the very different ideas from Islam, America, Asia, and these huge contemporary challenges. Nukes, collapsing states, the digital whirlwind. It's clear the quest for order is far from over.
No, it's ongoing. And it seems to require this incredibly delicate, constantly adjusting balance of restraint, force, and legitimacy.
A real tightrope walk.
Especially in a world changing so fast.
In a world, as the source says, of increasingly contradictory realities and instant information, can leaders actually get above the daily noise? Can they chart a course from where we are to somewhere we've never been?
That's the ultimate question.
Or, like that fragment puts it, one cannot step twice in the same river because history's waters are ever changing. So the final thought for you, listening, what steps will you take to try and understand and maybe navigate these constantly shifting currents?